What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I am your host, Ben Burnett. Joining me, once again, your other host, my pal and yours, Lewis, Mr. E, Ezekiel. Lewis, my friend, my buddy, my pal, my guy. How are we doing on this fine Tuesday evening?
I'm doing well. Solo with the kids tonight, so crossing my fingers that we don't have a bunch of little ones pouring down the stairs and into the podcast studio down here in the basement. But I think they are pretty well occupied. Elon's got the one to deal with, and Brian too. But I'm bringing three to the table here, so right. Triple dad action.
Yeah, I appreciate that about you because no matter what complaints either Brian or Elon have about podcasting with children, I have more kids involved in my podcast than either of them do.
Oh yeah, so, there you go.
Yeah, I don't even have to do anything.
Luckily, we don't try to go for hours and hours at a time, unlike some people.
Yes, that's true. And so for that reason, let's jump into the show, Lewis. We have a busy one tonight, and we have to start with a topic that was discussed on Sunday night's show, and that is what the Senators are going to do in the absence of Joshua Norris. Breland had mentioned this is a great opportunity for Shane Pinto, who's been incredible to start the year. 5 goals already, 6 points on the season. Shane Pinto remains just 20% rostered and looked like a shoo-in to fill in for Josh Norris on the second line, between Claude Giroux and Alex DeBrincat. But instead, as we learned yesterday, Josh Norris is out at least 2 weeks. But it looks like the Senators are hesitant to split Pinto from line mate Tyler Mott, who's also been very, very good. 5 points in his last 4, plus 11 hits. And so instead, the second line is now being centered by the crown jewel of the Mika Zibanejad trade. That is Derek Brassard, if you don't remember, as I'm sure we all do. Fondly remember the Mika Zibanejad for Derek Brassard trade. So in the first game of the season for Brassard, he came in, scored a goal, 1 shot, put up 2 hits, 16 minutes of time on ice. Lewis, I guess I'm wondering, first of all, is Brassard interesting to you on that second unit? He is as our friend Cousin Dave would say, a ludicrous streamer level, 1% rostered on Yahoo. Or if you were looking for a streamer off of the Sens, would you rather grab Pinto, who's 20% rostered, less available in deeper leagues, or Tyler Mott, who's 20% rostered? But, each of those players have obviously had a 5 games longer track record of success this year.
Yeah, it's a tough call. So I think one thing that Brassard has in his favor is he's getting in on that second power play unit, which is, pretty good and is not, it's not an even split, but it's like closer to a 60-40 than it is like a 70-30 or an 80-20. So I do like that for Brassard, and I'm glad that he scored. I just feel like because Pinto has been so much more reliable and he's getting it done from that third line, he's got like a real Gabe Vilardi feel, although maybe that's not the compliment that it was that it would have been last week.
Sure.
Since he's gone a little bit cold.
He's like a first week of the season, Gabe Vilardi.
Yeah. So for that reason, I feel like I lean towards Pinto just because he's been showing that he can do it. And I feel like he could potentially move into that spot if we don't see some production or some effectiveness from Brassard on that second power play. I kind of wonder why it isn't Pinto, I suppose. But like you said, kind of keep things the way that they are. But I don't see why he couldn't slide into the power play. I would take Pinto over Brassard just because I feel like Brassard is, you're hoping that he turns into something. Whereas Pinto has shown, at least to start the season, that he is capable of really generating this offense on his own. That's not something that Brassard, I think, can do at this time in his career. I don't really know how many minutes he can handle. I think Pinto is the guy that I would grab. I didn't have the option, so I grabbed Brassard in Cupful Tier 1. Elon ran and grabbed Pinto. I'm glad that he scored, but, Pinto, of course, scored as well and really kept his streak going. So that's where I would lean. And definitely interested in Mott if I'm in a bangers league or like categories that count hits. I think that is a surprising amount of production from a good Michigan boy who hasn't seen a lot of fantasy relevance lately.
That's exactly where I'm at as well. It's other than the Michigan stuff, which makes me dislike him.
All right, well, hold on. You got to do your whole Rangers deal talking about the Zibanejad trade, high-fiving yourself, so I'm going to jump in where I can, bud.
Yeah, Michigan sucks. Yeah, I think that Pinto is the guy that I would want of those three. Pretty much for sure. Tyler Mott, interesting in a bangers. I'm with you there. Why don't you take us to our next story, Lewis?
All right, so we have a number of storylines to talk about out of Columbus. As long as we're talking Michigan, might as well move to Columbus next, right? Patrick Laine back in the lineup already on Tuesday. Pretty exciting. I don't think a lot of people expected him to be back so quick. You know, we saw early in the morning that he was taking line rushes, and we thought, okay, well, that's great, but, you know, he's still probably a few games off. But no, he's back in. And what's especially great about that is that he should have his feet well under him by the time the Jackets play in what patron Antti tells us is his home turf in Finland. Last time he went to Finland with the Jets, he had a hat trick in the first game and he scored in the second game as well. So I have high hopes for how he can perform in those Finnish games next week. So yeah, great news, obviously, for Laine owners. I doubt he, you know, was dropped in any but the most shallow leagues that maybe didn't have, IR slots or something. But just good news, I think, overall for those Jets top liners. Interesting to see Kent Johnson taking some power play one reps today, although we'll see if that sticks. They are up against it, playing Arizona today with your boy Shane Gostisbehere just going ham on them. Another word of caution, I think, as we think about, you know, streaming and players in the aftermath of this foreign trip, we've seen some of those players, you know, like that trip kind of takes a toll on them. We heard some news today about how the Sharks and Predators staffs have been kind of in contact with each other about the challenges of coming back to an NHL schedule after the matches in Prague. So I would just say beware potentially of streaming any Blue Jackets as they make their way back from those Finland games. They may not be as sharp as they would be otherwise. And of course, that goes for the Avalanche players as well, who will additionally be making their way back from that trip. Some other news out of Columbus, Justin Danforth, who started out filling in for Laine on that top line and then dropped down, has a torn labrum that required surgery. That's going to keep him out for 6 months, so that mostly looks like a see you next season. Very unfortunate for him, but hopefully he is back at full health after the surgery and after his healing time is up. And we were maybe a little bit concerned about Elvis Merzlikins losing some starts to Daniil Tarasov, but Tarasov has been pulled from their game against Arizona. So I would imagine that that's got to make those Elvis owners feel a little more confident.
Does it, or does it just show you that maybe Columbus is not the wagon that people had hoped they were going to be this year? That's kind of where I am right now, is like maybe they just don't have goaltending and the rest of their roster isn't good enough to like carry them into the playoffs, I would guess, based on how competitive the East is right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. That may be how things truly are. But you know, at the very least, hopefully those Merzlikins owners will get a little more volume than maybe they were worried about getting earlier in the week.
Well, let's go over to a team that's even more depressing than the Columbus Blue Jackets, and that's the Vancouver Canucks, who have started 0-5-2 this season. I saw a tweet today that said, and I therefore have not fact-checked it. My fact-checking was by going on twitter.com and seeing the tweet, reading it, and enjoying it. Therefore, it must be true. The Vancouver Canucks are one loss away from starting a season with more losses than the Vancouver Grizzlies ever did in the NBA. So that's a fun statistic for a team that was supposed to be playoff bound this year. And the hits keep on coming for those 0-5-2 Canucks. Quinn Hughes has been added to the IR as of yesterday. He is week to week, which is a big blow for a team that is already very terrible. This may be a good opportunity for you, though, if Oliver Ekman-Larsson happens to be on the waiver wire in your fantasy league. He obviously moved right onto the top power play in the last game, and in the last 5 games, he has put up 4 assists, 10 shots, and 6 hits. OEL, it's been a couple years since he was the number 1 power play fella in Phoenix, but he was really good. He was okay. He was very usable in bangers leagues in particular. I should walk back that he was very good. I'm having flashbacks to early era Keeping Karlsson pods where Brian and Elon would argue over Oliver Ekman-Larsson stealing. It feels like we were just babes back then, Lewis. Anyway.
Yeah, early in our careers and whatnot. Yeah, I think OEL is pretty interesting. Certainly there's a ton of talent on that top power play in Vancouver. They are really struggling to make it productive and to finish. But I would say, that has him in a nice spot. It's going to be, at least a couple weeks. It sounds like, I think that is a nice spot filler in the meantime, and we'll see if he can find some production there.
All right, Lewis, we are going to take a very quick break. And when we return, we'll get into the streak section of today's show. You're listening to Short Shifts. Welcome back to Short Shifts. Lewis, we are back from our break. No interruptions. Let's jump right into the streak section. And I want to bring up a guy, first of all, that I know you're hype on because he is on your Cupful team, and you are famously nothing if not obsessed with your Cupful team. And that's Nico Hischier, 6 points in the last 4 games, not counting tonight, in which the Devils have scored 4 goals, but I don't believe Hischier is in on it.
No points yet.
No points yet. That's right.
His line is really nasty with the surprise Andre Palat injury. They hit the blender, and he's out there with like Zetterlund and Tatar, I think.
Oh, I appreciate that insight because I obviously prepped this before that happened. I do want to, you know what? Everything I say, I'm still saying full-throatedly. It sounds like Andre Palat will be back. He's just a bit banged up. I don't suspect that's a secretly long-term injury, and I suspect that Hischier winds up back where he's supposed to be before long. But
yeah,
Hischier 46% rostered right now on Yahoo. And I think it's really time for that number to start to rise. He's been playing 20 minutes a night this season, averaging 3 shots a game. He's on that top power play. And that line with Andre Palat and Jesper Bratt that we just mentioned has flat out outperformed the Jack Hughes, Mercer, and Sharon Govich line so far this year. I don't think that, it's quite a 1A, 1C, as the production might suggest the split is right now, with the Bratt line being sort of above the Hughes line. But I do think both lines are going to be good. I think this is a team that can support 2 strong offensive lines with fantasy relevant players. So I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think, no, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to say people need to pause the pod and go add Nico Hischier, because I think he might be that good. And I heard Brian and Elon talk about doing it for Shane Pinto the other day. And that's absolutely, I think Nico Hischier is several stratospheres above how excited I am for Shane Pinto. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is a guy who's coming into his own, and especially when he is out there with Bratt. Bratt has shown some serious playmaking chops this season. Some of these assists, I think he has 7 assists now, counting 1 here on Tuesday.
I think he's up to 9, my friend.
Holy moly.
He leads the league in assists.
Yeah, it's been crazy. CJ Tachuro, who does I don't know if he's a beat writer. He does a lot of Devil stuff, is like on this campaign of Jesper Bratt is the best passer in the NHL. And he just, I don't know that he is the best, but he has been an outstanding setup man this season. And it's really been a difference maker, for that line and especially for Hischier's success. So, I think if he is sitting around on your league, I would drop Shane Pinto to pick up Nico Hischier in a heartbeat. Right?
Yes, very clearly.
All right, we are going to head for a warmer climate to talk about another high time on ice player, but this is a guy who is not giving us the level of success that we hope to see. We want to talk about Sam Reinhart. He's really struggling right now. He has no points in the last 4 games prior to Tuesday night's match is what I mean to say. And he's only got 1 power play assist overall in 6 games. This isn't going to last forever. I want to encourage Reinhart owners to be patient. I don't really have any advice beyond that. He hasn't scored in those 6 games on 18 shots, but he's getting 3 shots a game on average. He's playing 21 minutes a night. He's playing with Barkov at even strength, and just 1 game below 65% of the available power play time on ice. And even then, he was over 50%. So, the team's just shooting 7% while he's on the ice at 5-on-5. He obviously has not managed to get in on any of the goals that have been scored while he's on the ice. So that IPP of 0 is not going to last. The Thurs are going through some growing pains as they adjust to their reconfigured roster, but I think sooner or later, Reinhart is going to break through. I'm up against him this week, so if he wants to take another few games, that's fine by me, but he's not going to shoot 0% forever. He's not going to be stuck at 0% IPP either. So give him his chance. Hang in there with Reinhart. He's doing a lot of things right. His line is driving play, dominating, Corsi for, expected goal percentage, all the stuff that you want to see. It just hasn't turned into production yet.
Counterpoint on this, 7.5% on ice shooting percentage isn't like horrible.
No, I think I wrote in my notes that it is okay, but has maybe some room for improvement.
Okay.
He hasn't gotten in on it. That's like the one stat that I think is kind of like, it's fine, but it's not, it's whatever. But I think that we're going to see some improvement.
Let me throw this stat at you that I'm just noticing as I peruse dauberhockey.com. Last year and the 5 years the 4 years prior, Sam Reinhart played 56% ozone starts or above. This season, 36% ozone start. So
interesting.
Getting a lot of defensive looks. That's something that I don't think it completely neuters him, but I definitely could imagine it bearing out. Like if that continues, if that split where he's playing only 1/3 of his shift start in the ozone, it's the same for Barkov too. So pretty clearly, right, Paul Maurice is using this lineup very differently than they were used in the past. I'm pretty nervous just based on that.
Yeah, so maybe don't go out and try to acquire him or do a buy low. Yeah, that's really interesting. So they're kind of being asked to be that shutdown line. They're not, they're surviving fine. But yeah, I wonder how long that might last for. I wonder if Maurice will take a different tack at some point, but that's interesting. Some real food for thought there. Given that information, do you think you hang in there with Reinhart? 21 minutes a night with Barkov.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder, now I want to know, are there forwards in the NHL who play 40% or fewer ozone starts and put up 70 points? I feel like that's a deep dive research thing that we'll have to look into between now and the next show.
I think the concern should at least be assuaged by those 3 shots per game. It's not like the defensive zone starts are preventing him from getting some offensive opportunities. Maybe they simply are good enough to be able to move the puck up and, make something happen with it, even if he hasn't been able to cash in. So I think that should temper it a little bit. Yeah, no, I definitely am not saying, I definitely agree with you that they are a line that's still going to get their chances. It's hard for me to imagine that, they're going to not get points. Playing with, the Barkov-Reinhart line is just going to forget how to score or not be able to dominate. But definitely, I feel like they're going to have fewer chances if they're starting this many shifts in the D zone or in the neutral zone. I guess we'll head over to our next hot streak, and yeah, Lewis, I do want to put a bookmark in that one and come back to it maybe on Thursday and talk about whether, or you know what, reach out to us at ShortShiftsKK on Twitter or in the Discord group and let us know. Let us know what you think about, this situation. And if you're a Thurs fan, one of the many Thurs fans that listen every week to our show, Thurs Nation out there, let us know. Come on the show Thursday and we'll chat all things Thurs. I need to go to a team that I do not like, Lewis. That's called a big league transition right there. Let's talk about the New York Islanders, and in particular, Anders Lee. Hot. 7 points in the last 5 games. Very good to see that shot rate bounce back to just under 3 per game after he dipped nearly a shot per game last year. Still a bit shaken up by that ACL tear in 2021, he said in a recent interview. So it does seem to make sense physically that he would be in a better place in 2023. And all of this now that he's finally been split from Matt Barzal and has been getting along very well with Brock Nelson and Anthony Beauvillier on what I would probably call a 1B line on Long Island. Lee's numbers are still unsustainably high for sure. Ideally, I'd see him as I'd like to see him get along as a 60 to 65 point guy rest of season. But I do think he's somebody you ride while he's hot.
Because, and I sort of say that, obviously, I'm not saying like, oh, as opposed to the type of guys who you drop when they're doing really well. Mainly just because I don't think that he's somebody that I'm anxious to try and sell high or anything, I'm not anxious to get him off my team, I guess, because I really like an early season hot streak for an established player who has a new coach, because there's always that chance that the new situation unlocks some other opportunity or deployment or, some other level of production. So I'm trying to be open-minded here about my despicable New York Islanders, and I'm into Anders Lee right now. Lewis, that's all the time that we have for tonight. For myself, Ben Burnett, I'm signing on out of here. Please come and join us on Twitch next week, or on Thursday, rather. We'll be back in 2 days. Thank you to Lewis. Thank you to John. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us this evening, especially those who came live on twitch.tv/KeepingCarlson. As Ben said, give us a follow at ShortShiftsKK, as well as Brian and Elon at KeepingCarlson, and Dave Betton of the Stream Scheme at NHL Stream Scheme. Also recommend you follow at Game Day Lines, at Game Day Goalies, and at Game Day News, and the Game Day Lines tweets website puts all that information together in one convenient place. Thank you to John Reed for helping us with our Twitch images. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach, and until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.